Welcome to the Golden Threads. In episode 4, I speak to Subhi Awad, a Palestinian refugee living on Bundjalung Country. When Subhi and I had this conversation, it was 9 months into the genocide in Gaza. Today, we are 637 days into this genocide. I don't know that anyone could have imagined that this barbarianism could continue into its second year. But here we are. The body count is actually unknown, but it is unfathomable. What we do know is that the majority of people killed by Israel are children and women. Subhi and I speak about what it means to be Palestinian in this land now called Australia, about return, dignity, and the legacy of survival. This episode is for Subhi and for all the Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank, in 48, and across the diaspora. We see you. We stand with you. We love you. Let's begin. Hey, can you tell us your name?
Hi, I'm Subhi Awad.
Hey, Subhi. Where were you born?
I was born in Beirut as a Palestinian refugee. Beirut's in Lebanon, just north of Israel.
Okay. Tell us about growing up.
Well, we grew up in a sort of traditional kind of Palestinian way in the city, though. So the place where I grew up was called the Mazra, which means the farm. But it wasn't a farm; it was in the middle of the city, and we grew up in this traditional way where this sort of extended family, we would always get together and eat in these big extended groups and take turns going to people's houses and stuff. It was good. Yeah.
How did your parents come to be in Lebanon?
So you might know that in Palestine. The creation of Israel was happened with hundreds of massacres or 200 massacres and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people, the indigenous people there, and my parents separately moved to Lebanon, were forced to move to Lebanon. In my father's case, his father had a small jewelry shop. And the soldiers came and robbed, all the jewelry and beat my grandfather and told them that if he was there the next day, they'd kill him, kind of thing. You have to leave. And in my mother's village, they came and they killed a whole bunch of men. They took the strongest looking men they could find and just killed them and forced the rest to go to Lebanon. So that's how my parents ended up there. It was pretty brutal.
So they were forcibly displaced?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about your parents.
My dad was a really gentle guy, but he was also really smart. So he was one of the few Palestinians who was able to get a scholarship to the university because they were so poor they could never afford that. So he was one of the very few, and he aced everything, so he became this incredible engineer, and he had this way of making like complex 3D models in his brain, I can't do that. It's really awesome. And he was really gentle, but he was also really sort of communal. He thought of the world and everyone as really connected together. And that we're not separate from each other, and that we had to look after those less fortunate than us. That was a real sort of core belief of his, that if we were fortunate as he was, then we had to really look after those around us. And my mum's like pretty fierce lady, she's pretty tough. I mean, to the outside world, she's pretty tough, and and very capable person, but also really really stood up for herself, which was, you know, like a really positive thing to see as a role model. And they were great role models to us, really caring, really nurturing, really present, beautiful people. Really fortunate to have that.
How many kids did they have?
There was 3 of us, 3 boys. Oh
Oof.
my God, my poor mum. And, you know, she did incredibly well in really difficult situations with us. You know, refugees escaping from war, 3 boys, you know, this kind of difficult, you know, life, but also really privileged in a lot of ways.
So how old were you where you left Lebanon?
I was 7 when I first left. I remember when things started getting worse and worse, and you know, when bigger ordnance was being used and stuff. And my dad's company, he was working as an engineer, and they decided to leave Lebanon and relocate to Germany, and so they offered him a job to leave to Germany. But then we came back. We actually came back to Beirut, and that was bad because we got stuck much later, and that's when the war suddenly kicked off and the airport closed and we couldn't leave, and that was pretty hectic.
What year was that?
I think that was 81 would be my best guess. It was a long time ago, but I think it was 81.
And where did you go from there?
We went to Germany first with my dad's business, and he had to work away. And so it was just me and my brother and my mum, and it was really hard in Germany. We were in this small place, I've forgotten its name, and some people were nice to us, but many people were really, really like racist and really mean. I remember it in this shop, in this small shop. Like, my mum didn't drive, we didn't have choices, and the people in the shop wouldn't even sell her bread. You know, she's like trying to buy bread, and they wouldn't even sell it to her. We had some pretty rough encounters in Germany. And I mean, my mum, the reason why we were back in Beirut when we got stuck was my mum was like, I'd rather live in a war zone than this place. It's horrible. You know, there's no community. The people are mean to us, and you know, that kind of thing. So it was pretty tough for her.
I noticed an English accent.
Yeah. Yes. So we went to the UK.
Okay.
And I grew up and spent most of my life in the UK, in London. Love London. It was nothing like Germany. You know, you could get away from people who were mean to you and find people who were nice.
Okay.
You know, it was rough at first. Like, I couldn't speak any English, and you know, you go to school and if you can't speak a word of the language, it can be pretty tough. I remember my first school, my only friend was the milk lady. I would go around with her and deliver all the milk bottles to all the kids, you know, and I couldn't speak a word of English. So when all the other kids turned the page, I would just turn the page too, you know, like, I didn't know what was going on.
How old were you when you arrived in England?
I guess I was 7.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was, you know, like, it was really different. I mean, it was so weird being in a place where, you know, I come from war and like, you know, real fear and real like heavy feelings. And then you come to this place where people are worried that their shoes aren't the newest brand, or like they have spots on their face or something. And you kind of, you know, I didn't really feel part of that thing. And it's so culturally different. I remember in England, people asking me, well, how many people are in your family? We're like, I don't know. Because my family is my extended family. It's all the people who would eat with us, and all their uncles and aunties and everybody. And everyone was family. If they're older than you would always call them uncle or auntie. Like,
Sure.
You know, so when people said, "Oh, how many people are in your family?" I was like, "I don't know, hundreds. How many are in yours?" Like, what a question. Like,
Right.
my uncle, I don't know. So very culturally different.
Mm.
Yeah.
And what brought you to Australia?
Oh my God, I was in Thailand. I was living in Thailand. I met this beautiful woman called Heidi, and it was a love story, and I ended up here. We traveled around and we lived in Thailand for a long time, and we did a lot of fun stuff. And then it was time to have a child, you know, have our baby. And, you know, the place we were living in Thailand didn't have a hospital or a proper clinic. We were on a beach with no road. And like,
Mm.
yeah, so it was time to come to Australia and be with Heidi's parents and her family and, you know, yeah, and get
So
married.
so tell me about your experience as a migrant in Australia in comparison to being in England.
England was, you know, I was a child and I didn't have the language, and I've just come from this really like traumatic kind of thing. And, you know, as a child, I think you absorb the emotions around you, especially from adults and the vibe of what's going on. And I knew it was really stressful and really, you know, they were anxious and we just come from war and, you know, so that was quite a difficult process. Here it was really kind of like, I don't really feel like I fit in, you know? Like when we first arrived here, the first time was when the Cronulla riots happened. So I just got to the country and all over the TV are these people being like horrifically racist, you know, to people who pretty much like look like me, you know? And and the prime minister goes on the TV and says, "This isn't racism. You know, it's not racism. It's just a law and order problem, right, Howard? You know." And I'm thinking like, which part of fuck off Lebs doesn't he understand? You know? And I'm like, yeah, wow, this is a fucking freaky place. Like, where the hell am I?
Welcome to the colony.
Yeah, absolutely. And people have said to me, you know, in the past, you know, Australia's like a complex place. You know, people are because London is quite multicultural, right? Like,
Okay.
you know, they have their own problems, but not like this. Like people here, like racists here are like are emboldened, man. They're in your face, you know.
Mm.
They don't care here. It's
Mm.
like, you know, they have team racism, like
Mm.
you know, it's really different.
And what's been your experience?
Well, you know, like the Islamophobia thing is it's so like blatant. I guess in some ways it's better because it's just so open. At least you know where you stand with people.
Mm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's not this closet English racism where actually, you know, they're never going to give you a job or they'll never going to, you know, invite you for dinner or something, right? But and just go mutter some mean words about you to you know their partner or something.
Mm.
But here it's like it's in your face.
Mm.
Yeah.
How did you become an activist?
I think a lot of it is grounded in that thing from my dad, and my grandfather was very much the same, like that we're all connected. And I guess it stems from there, and really then when you have that as a core belief, then I think you know everything stems from there. But I remember being at protests, you know, as a child. You know, from when I was 12, I was marching and hollering about, you know, the invasion of Lebanon and Palestine and all those things. And I guess I've been in and out because, you know, it can be quite exhausting. But I think for me, I do it because I know it's the right thing to do. I do it because in some ways it's too painful in my own heart not to do it. I don't feel I'm being true to myself
Mm.
if I'm not doing it. And it's not an outcome-based thing, I guess. Like, people can say, what's the point? Like, you're not going to win. You're not going to make the change that you want. You're not going to see the world that you want. Oh, they're all corrupt. You can't change them. All that kind of sort of defeatist talk. Like, why bother? Like, let's just go and get high, But I mean, I'd say two things to that. One is, imagine how much worse the world would be if people hadn't got up and done those things, and stood up and said, no, this is not okay. Like, imagine how much worse, how many more wars, how much more inequality, how much worse it would be. So it's a constant battle. I don't think it's one that you're ever going to win or lose completely. Like, it's, like, the corruption will always try and take more and be greedy and hurt people and do the things that they do. And the people on the other side are always going to say, no, that's not okay, and we want to support these people and we want to look after these people. And so it's a constant thing. But also, I think, like, in an internal personal thing, like, when I look in the mirror, I want to know that I'm in the right place, I'm doing the right thing, I'm living in the way that I'm supposed to live according to my beliefs and my ancestors, and my culture and my traditions, and how I think, that myself should act, not other people. So, but I've been in and out. I haven't constantly been. Even as a young person, I was involved in the poll tax demonstrations, which are really unfair taxes in the UK, and in the student union, doing stuff against police brutality, and then, more Palestinian stuff. I was also, like, into selling olive oil that was like a grassroots harvested from Palestine. We'd distribute to people, and lots of sort of things like that. But I was never wanted to be any kind of front person, or be really heavily into organizing or anything like that. I was just happy to play my part and then do the next thing, to be honest.
Sure.
Yeah.
So talk to us about what you've been up to.
Yeah. So, well, things have been pretty hectic. There's this thing where these images that we're seeing from Gaza, and this thing where I mean, it's so awful what's going on. It's so awful. And it felt like that I just couldn't stand it, like I had to do stuff. And I felt that in the past, when the Great March of Return was happening, and people were getting shot with exploding bullets. I went to Mullum and did stuff, but this time it was really different, because the scale of the atrocities, the slaughter, is just horrific. So yeah, I just wanted to act. I just wanted to do stuff, even if no one came along with me, And so I just went to Mullum and just started doing stuff, like sitting there asking people to sign stuff and do stuff. And there was a lot of people who really wanted to do stuff too. So it just kind of grew, and yeah, we've been full power the whole time since. I mean, we've raised at least $30,000. We haven't been able to track everything, because a lot of it went directly to the charities without going to us. So we don't know exactly, but we've raised a lot of money. We've put on a lot of information nights. We put on gigs. We've put on, we did a council resolution motion, which was fabulous.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the council motion was great. Like it's an important thing to feel like the community that you're in is standing on the right side of history. It's standing against racism. It's standing for humanitarian law, which is being absolutely, destroyed now. And it's standing like for aid for hungry people and medicine for hurt people, and it's standing really to not send weapons to a genocide, because it's clear, like if there's this level of horrific brutality happening, then we should have nothing to do with it. And the amazing councillor Kate Curry and with Duncan Day really worked really hard on it, and we supported them, and it was a really powerful moment. It was a real victory, actually, and it's good that we can have victories like that, because it really, you feel like your community's in the right place. It's on the right side of history, and it's standing for what's right. Northern Rivers Friends of Palestine is like a group that's really built on lots of other groups and amazing activists. It wasn't a thing that we just created. Ever since I've been here, and I've been told, but way before I've been here, there's been a really powerful pro-peace, pro sort of end the occupation type movement, and I know that lots of incredible people have been in that movement for a very long time. Lots of them have moved on, but since I've been here, probably 18 years ago, 19 years ago when I first arrived, that was happening, and some of those people are still in the movement. So we rapidly expanded on what was already there and made this large group of people who are really active. That's been the key. Like lots of groups have lots and lots of members, and you see, but we've been super active. We really have. I mean, the body of work that the group has got through is quite an achievement, I think. And we've done some really great work, so I'm really proud of that. But I'm just so impressed with the people in the group. Like really awesome, beautiful human beings with, giving up and working so hard, giving up their time, working so hard to try their best to affect some change. Really awesome.
What have you noticed has changed since October?
Yeah, wow. I mean, I'm used to being gaslit all the time about Palestine, right? Like I'm a Palestinian guy, right? Like, and I've been studying and reading about it, and reading books, and like I would say I know quite a lot about the subject, and lots of people will just come up to me and start, where are you from? Oh, I'm Palestinian. Oh, like you must have been born with a bomb up your ass, right? Like you guys are all crazy over there, kind of thing. And obviously I'm exaggerating, but that is one reaction kind of, that you get. And a lot of reactions are, very pro-Israeli, Israel reactions, and without really understanding what's going on. And one thing that's changed now is so many people understand what's happening. This brutal colonization, ethnic cleansing, and now a genocide. And the big thing that's changed is so many people now understand what's happening, and it's become this like enormous movement, like one of the biggest global movements ever seen. Like this is global in every country, and the numbers for 9 months straight now are incredible. Like millions and millions of people, countries are doing things. The UN is doing things, like the International Criminal Court, Court of Justice. Like, I mean, it's become a thing now that that there is like a really solid resistance to this colonization, and I think it's a beautiful thing, but it's also been like there's this thing happening where people who are like environmentalists are like supporting Palestine now in a really active, meaningful way. You know, like there's the Greens Party, but of course, you know, indigenous activists, you know, First Nations, black fellas. It's just such a massive part of what really supports our movement. I mean, it's the grounding for our movement, and the two movements together have always been connected, but now it's like it's so solid together because, you know, really we're both fighting the same system, you know, the exact same colonial supremacist system, and you know, the whole way that you know, this military police industry is funding these very unjust things that continue. So, you know, Israel will use billions and billions and billions of dollars of weapons to do their genocide in Gaza, but also on the occupation generally. And Australia wants to be this massive weapons supply. It wants to be the arms dealer of the world, and then they've said so. We're going to move away from coal, and we're going to move towards military, right? So that's Australia's plan to get away from coal, right? Which is make, you know, death and destruction for the world. And I think, you know, that same system of attacking indigenous people with these weapons is keenly felt around the world. I mean, all indigenous people know that, you know, the colonial settler project is based on weapons. You know, it's based on this supremacy of one set of people over another, and we know that our struggle is, you know, one and the same. It's a massive deal for us, and also, you know, other movements, you know, the queer, gay movement. We've got, you know, anti-racism movements from all across the spectrum, from you know, anti-Semitism, you know, Islamophobia, and refugee movements. So really, we're all united, especially, you know, with the Palestinian struggle right now. It's seen as the corruption is seen as so blatant and so obvious. It's such a clear example of corruption. We've got this genocide that's happening. We've got war crimes being committed. And at the same time, our governments are completely protecting Israel, you know, diplomatically, politically, and sending them weapons at the same time. And that's so clear now, you know, the corruption is so obvious. And I think people can't pretend anymore that, you know, politicians are just these really awesome people, but they have such difficult choices to make, oh, poor them kind of thing. No, we're seeing like complicity in genocide. You know, that's not a difficult choice to make. Like, there's a genocide, don't support it. You know, so I really think people are beginning to see through the corruption a little bit more, which is a really massive change, that we can all see that we're all fighting against the same thing.
It's interesting to see the Australian government's response to what's been happening in the Ukraine in comparison to the genocide that's happening in Palestine.
Oh, it's absolutely completely different. I mean, what's happening in Ukraine is terrible. It's awful. You know, we've got this attack by this military and this occupation, and it's terrible. And that's like a standard war, occupation, conflict. What's happening in Gaza is so much worse. I mean, okay, in Ukraine there's a population of 44 million people, and so far in quite a bit over 2 years, there have been 600 children have died, which is terrible. It's a tragedy. It's awful. And we should definitely be opposing Russia and sanctioning Russia for what it's doing in Ukraine.
Yes.
Absolutely. But in Gaza, in a population of just 2.2 million people, in 9 months, there have been at least 15,000 children have been killed. That is 1,400 times worse than in Ukraine. Normalized for the population and the amount of time. So as a child in Gaza, every day has 1,400 times more chance of being killed than a child in Ukraine. Okay? So that's what we're not just talking about another conflict. We're talking about an absolute atrocity, and our government is supporting that. It's you can't explain that away in just this nonsense political speak. It's now got to the stage where Australia is so complicit in this genocide. It's sending weapons, it's sending political cover and diplomatic cover, and it's not even fulfilling its obligations under the humanitarian laws. We should not be doing that, right? These laws are in black and white, and these are the most important laws that the world has. This is what stops genocides and stops, World War III's and the most awful things. These are the worst crimes a state can commit and humans can commit, and yet we're complicit. And so I think it's impossible to ignore now just how corrupt our political system is, and really the need to change it now is so evident. We can't just pretend it's just difficult choices. It's really in our face now.
We're now in July 2024, and to date, what, if any, action has the Australian government taken?
Well, they have done pretty much everything, but they've done everything to support Israel, really. The cutting of funds for UNRWA after the ICJ said that there was plausible genocide happening. The highest court in the world says there's a plausible genocide, and then within a very short space of time, you add to that genocide by stopping funding to the most important food source. I mean, the Australian government has done nothing to make this tragedy less of a tragedy than it is. It's done everything to keep it going, really. And it's a crime. I mean, people are taking Albanese to court, right, for being complicit in a genocide. Well, they are lawyers. They must have grounds for that, and I think they probably have very good grounds for it.
In the news this week, we have seen Prime Minister Albanese talk about a new envoy for anti-Semitism. I believe an envoy for Islamophobia is to follow shortly after. What are your thoughts around this?
I think we're seeing, I don't see it as an anti-racism initiative. I really don't. Because, what we're seeing is this conflation between, Israel and Judaism, and they're not the same thing at all.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Well, of course. For instance, within our movement, the Northern Rivers Friends of Palestine, we have lots of Jewish people, right? And they are openly very, very critical of Zionism and of Israel and what it's doing and the occupation and everything else, right? Now, we're saying to these people, these Jewish people, right, that criticizing Israel is criticizing them. And that's really offensive to them, because they criticize Israel as well. It's in fact, this thing is a weaponized way of repression against pro-Palestinian voices, and it's been used in this way for a very, very long time. We don't need to single out Islamophobia and anti-Semitism as special forms of racism, right? anti-Semitism is hating Jewish people because they're Jewish, right? Like that is a definition of racism, like hating a particular group because they belong to that particular group. And, you know, anti-Palestinian racism is hating Palestinians because they belong to a particular group. But being against Israeli occupation and Israeli genocide has nothing to do with hating any particular groups. Absolutely nothing to do with groups whatsoever. It's opposing the policies of the state of Israel. It's got nothing to do with the people. Okay, so this thing where we like opposing Israel in some way as anti-Semitic is such an obvious smear. It's such an obvious smear. So what I want to know is, why do we need a particular envoy for a particular sort of racism? Are we going to have an envoy for, you know, anti-black racism? Okay, are we going to have an envoy for you know, anti-Asian? You know, like, why do we need each group has its own envoy? Like, we already have anti-racism laws. Why do they need expanding? And I think what's happening is this kind of weaponized definition, you know, of anti-Semitism that is so expanded to mean that if you say anything about Israel, we're going to smear you, and now we're going to make laws that attack you. And I think that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing repression, like we're seeing an attack on the Palestinian movement, and I think this movement has taken them by surprise. I think they're scared, and I think they're making bad choices that will make our movement even stronger. Because when you try and repress an idea, that idea will get stronger, and you will have to use more and more and more violence, and that will just make the idea even more stronger. And I think that's what we'll see here. Yeah.
So, where to from here?
Well, I think we just keep going. We really do. I think we are making such a massive difference. I think, you know, I could never have imagined something like this. And the amount of people that now will vote on this issue, the amount of people that will boycott on this issue, the number of people joining organizations, raising money, grassroots movements. I mean, it's enormous. And I think that it won't go away because you can't unsee what you've seen now. You know, once you understand what's happening there, you can't like suddenly unsee it. Like, it's awful. You know, it's the most horrific thing to trap people for 9 months in this small space and then just, you know, massacre them day after day. It's absolutely horrendous, and I think it can't be unseen. It won't never go back to what it was before. Yeah. And we'll make Palestine free one day. You know, I'm sure we'll see it in my lifetime, or if not, in my daughter's lifetime.
I hope so.
And I want to take my dad's ashes back to Palestine, you know, and scatter them in a free Palestine, you know. Yeah.
Thanks, Subhi.